From our 22 News Broadcast Center, this is 22 News in Focus.
Good Sunday afternoon and welcome to 22 News in Focus. I'm Laura Hutchinson. Westover Air Reserve Base has had a commanding presence in western Massachusetts since 1940 and continues to serve our country after 75 years. As part of the base's anniversary celebration, they'll be hosting the Great New England Airshow next weekend, May 16th and 17th. It is an exciting time for us here in western Massachusetts, but some of you may be wondering what the Airshow will include and how logistics will be handled. That's where 22 News in Focus comes in this week. Today we'll have a special one-hour program dedicated to this very exciting event. We'll get to talk about what goes into holding such a huge event, as well as what the future plans are for the base. We'll also find out the latest on the C-5 aircraft carriers that are going to Texas. Starting off our conversation today, we have Master Sergeant Andrew Visco from the 439th Air Wing at Westover Air Reserve Base. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Laura.
So happy 75th anniversary. This must be a huge time at the base right now.
It is. It's an anniversary that all of us are going to remember for a long time, because this air show is going to mark the history of a base which has gone through a lot of changes, a lot more changes than an average Air Force base. It's gone from a bomber training base in World War II to an airlift hub for the Berlin Airlift in 1948 to the Strategic Air Command during the Cold War to today's Westover Air Reserve Base, the biggest reserve base in the country, 2,500 acres. Wow,
and you have been preparing for this air show. How long does it even take to put together an air show?
Months and months. It's a dedicated cadre of people who are putting this unprecedented show together, and it's an extra amount of effort this time because we have an unprecedented amount of headliners coming, the Blue Angels and the Snowbirds and 4 other major flying acts.
Excellent. We're going to talk more specifics about those flying acts in the next segment. But first, I want to hear more about the history of Westover, because so many people live near this base, see the C-5s flying around. You can hear them. You don't even need to see them. Tell me, how we got to where we are today. How did this base start out?
Well, when we have thousands of people come onto the base for the air show, it's important that we all try to remember why we're there, and it's because of the base. And in 1939, the first shovels went in the dirt. And in 1940, the first airplanes arrived at the base. So that's our 75th ode that we're doing. The ode to the base is 75 years of flying out there, a who's who of airplanes that have started out with bombers and trainers in World War II, to airlifters during the Berlin Airlift, as I mentioned earlier, to the bombers and tankers, everybody that talks about the B-52s that flew over western Massachusetts. Those were the signature airplanes that people talk about. But we can't forget, and this is what we'll mark during the anniversary air show, we can't forget about all the other airplanes, and most important, the men and women who flew and supported these planes through all the decades of our history. We're extremely proud of those people and all the airplanes.
Not many people may know how Westover actually got its name. How did Westover get its name?
We're always proud to talk about that too. Major General Oscar Westover was killed in an airplane accident in 1938, and one of his friends, who was a 4-star general at the time, General Hap Arnold, suggested to the War Department to rename it Westover Field, and it was renamed in 1940 from its original name of the Northeast Army Air Base. It became Westover Field in 1940, and then when the Air Force became its own entity in 1947, it became Westover Air Force Base.
Wow. What would he think, looking at the base now, what it's become, and having it named after him? I mean, how incredible.
Well, I always say rest in peace, sir, to him. I'm sure he's saluting wherever he's at. He's seen a lot of changes that I don't think a lot of us could foresee. A lot of changes from an active duty to a reserve base. There was a big drawdown in the 70s after Vietnam, and the base got quiet for a while as it went from an active duty base to what was then the first Air Force Reserve base in the entire country. So it was a big change. There was a little bit of a misperception out there then that the base was closed. It was partially closed because of the downsizing from Vietnam. But I'm sure that General Westover is looking down and smiling at all the history that we've had there.
I think so. One other point that makes next weekend so exciting is that it is actually Armed Forces Day as well. So we're coinciding with this anniversary. We have Armed Forces Day. I mean, could it be any more perfect? Now we just need the weather to be perfect, and that's perfect. Tell me, yeah.
Yeah, Armed Forces Day is a huge event for all 4 branches of the service. It's a very important day for us to remember the service that our men and women provide our country. The base is home to all 4 branches. Armed Forces Day goes back, though, to a history of the base having its Strategic Air Command open houses when the B-52s were flying overhead, all the way back to the 1950s, and in fact before that to the 1940s. So this is all merging into an extraordinary event that we're going to have. The Blue Angels were available on that weekend, which just so happened to be Armed Forces Day.
Wow, how exciting to have them there. There are some really interesting people who will be flying those planes as well, which we'll be able to talk about in a little bit. But first, why is it so important to remember, this air show, people are going to be having a lot of fun. It's going to be a spectacular event, but it is so important to remember that our military is working tirelessly all day, every day. Why is it so important to honor armed forces?
I think that when the people come out there and they view our airplanes, they're going to have the exclusive opportunity to be able to not just see the airplanes, but meet the men and women who fly them, the folks that fly our airplanes, the C-5s. There's that exclusive opportunity that people are going to have, and I think that's important as a way of really reaching out and recognizing the people of the armed forces.
Now, Westover has been hosting air shows since the 40s, right? I think the first one was actually in the 40s. How have they evolved over the years?
Well, surprisingly enough, in my research that I've done, they had as many as 100,000 people out there in the 1950s.
Wow.
There weren't as many people around Western Massachusetts then, but everybody knew the base was there, and the base would open up on Armed Forces Day for people and open up the gates for people to come in. So 100,000 people was a lot. We expect many more than that this time.
Wow, that's so exciting. So do you know how many more people? I mean, are we talking hundreds and hundreds of thousands? What do you think?
Well, we're going to look at Mother Nature and say, could you please cooperate with us? But if Mother Nature does cooperate, we're looking at 250,000 per day, so 500,000 people.
Wow. And the nature of these shows, we're going to see some incredible acts. How have those sort of evolved over the years as well?
Well, there's a lot of different acts at this one, but over the years I've seen the military shift from not just emphasis on the Blue Angels and the Thunderbirds, but to commemorate the older airplanes. So we'll have the Warbirds here, and they'll be doing some flybys too. So there'll be a nod to the present day military hardware that we see, but a nod also to those famous planes of World War II, which will bring back a lot of nostalgia for a lot of people because they have an unmistakable sound in the sky.
Wow. And when was the last time you actually had an air show at Westover?
2012.
Okay.
And we were unable to get a major headliner then, but this time is quite the opposite.
Yeah, we're overflowing with great events. It's going to be so great. Why has it been 3 years, though? Is there any particular reason why you haven't had an air show?
Well, we normally try to alternate with Barnes Air National Guard Base, so that's why it's spread out like that. They have one, and then we have one. They have one, we have one, so we go back and forth.
Okay, well, I think we should get to talking about what we're actually going to be seeing at this air show, so we are going to take a short break, and in a little bit, the Great New England Air Show will attract thousands of people to Chicopee. Find out how the base plans for this massive event and what you can expect to see in the sky. When we return, stay with us. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Welcome back to 22 News in Focus. Today we're talking about the 75th anniversary of Westover Air Reserve Base in Chicopee and the upcoming Great New England Air Show next weekend. We just talked a little bit about the history of the base and why this year's air show on Armed Forces Day and throughout the weekend is so important. Now let's find out what we can expect to see in our skies next weekend. We're continuing our conversation now with Master Sergeant Andrew Biscoe from the 439th Air Wing at Westover Air Reserve Base. And also joining us now, we have Lieutenant Colonel David Smith, who's also the Great New England Air Show Director. Thank you both once again for being here. You must have had a big job to put this show together because there are so many great headliners this year.
Yes.
Tell me about this process. How long did this take you to put together?
Well, we've been working on it for about a year. We started with a very small team, 4 or 5 of us, and then as the months go by, the team grows. It started out with the headline of the Blue Angels, the Navy Blue Angels, and that kind of set the date for us of May 16, 17, and everything came together around that.
Everything came together just perfectly. So let's talk about the schedule of events. So there is a breakfast May 15th. That's this Friday. Who's able to attend that, and what will be happening there?
That event is hosted by the Galaxy Community Council, and tickets are available online at thegreatnewenglandairshow.com. They host the event, and it's a ticket-only event. And then after the breakfast, some of the teams will be practicing at the base to prepare for the Saturday and Sunday air show.
So you get to kind of see a little bit of a preview.
Some of the people on base that day, yes, we'll still be setting up for the show and positioning airplanes and setting up the announcer stand, but maybe a little sneak peek.
A little sneak peek. That's kind of cool. Now, the air show is May 16th and 17th. The gates open at 8:30 a.m. and the show begins at 10. So tell me, what can we see from the Blue Angels to the Canadian Snowbirds? Tell me everything. Tell me everything.
Airplanes everywhere. So from the Canadians coming down, we'll have Navy airplanes, some Army helicopters there, and of course a good cross-section of all the Air Force airplanes, from fighters to cargos like the C-5 and air refueling airplanes.
Let's start with the Blue Angels demonstration team. First of all, why not the Thunderbirds? Why the Blue Angels? Why were the Blue Angels someone that you wanted to have here?
The Blue Angels we've never had at Westover before, so it was exciting to have a new team perform. They've performed in other areas around New England, but it was first for us at Westover, so we're excited about that. And they coordinate their schedules pretty well to make sure that they crisscross the country and change up their routine. So we're happy to have them, and either team is actually wonderful to have, as well as the Snowbirds.
Can you tell me about the aircraft that they fly, the FA-18s?
Sure. The F-18 is it's a Navy and Marine Corps carrier-based airplane. The training is all Navy-based training, and it's the actual fighters that they use in combat that they've repainted and brought over to Westover to practice in the demonstration teams.
Now, I'm going to be flying with the Blue Angels on Wednesday. Is that what I'm going to be flying in that
yes,
day?
yeah, that's exactly it.
So maybe we should talk about this. So how fast do they go? We go from 0 to what?
Well, they can go supersonic.
Wow.
And I'll let the pilot go ahead and brief you on exactly the exact speed, but it should be somewhere around 600 miles per hour, plus or minus. And you'll be going up to a special designated military operating area up to the north, and as much as you want, I'm sure the pilot will take you through the full capabilities of the airplane.
Wow. Well, that will be really something to experience this Wednesday. Now, my understanding is there's going to be the first female pilot to fly for the Blue Angels will also be a part of the show this weekend, but there's actually 2 females part of the team as well, right? Sure.
The pilot is the C-130 Marine Corps, affectionately named Fat Albert, and that 130 is painted in the Blue Angel scheme, and they'll be flying in front of the crowd along with the F-18s. And the other aviator is a weapons systems officer in the Navy, and she was here earlier last fall as the advanced officer to go ahead and check out Westover and make sure that Westover fit all of the Blue Angel needs, which we pass with flying colors.
Now, is she actually from Cape Cod? I was hearing one of the 2 females are from Cape Cod.
Davenport Mazes, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. How exciting is that to sort of have someone like that here? You know, she has a Massachusetts roots as well.
Oh, absolutely. And we actually try to accommodate the friends and the family of the Blue Angels, as well as any Snowbirds, the other airplanes that are coming in, the F-22. We love it when they come back home, and that's how actually most of our airplanes are piloted or crewed by members that join the military, serve time, or either on active duty or in the reserves, and they come back because they are proud of what they do in the military, and they want to show that to all of their friends from high school and their parents and uncles. So
and the Canadian Snowbirds, have we had them here before, or is that new for them as well?
They came down in about a decade ago. They came down and they do a wonderful show in their tutors. It's 9 airplanes in tight formation, and they stay right in front of the crowd because the airplane goes a little slower than the F-18s, but that enables them to turn and to do their routine almost entirely in front of the crowds because they are going slow and graceful.
Wow. And the U.S. Army's Golden Knights.
Yes, they're a parachute team.
Okay.
And they'll do two jumps. One to open the show at 10 o'clock with a flag jump, where the national anthem will be sung as the flag's descending.
Wow.
With the team. And then later on in the afternoon, they'll do a mass exodus jump where the whole team will do formation parachuting, both free fall and when the chutes are open.
Okay, and the F-22 Raptors, I know that you were talking about those before.
Oh, absolutely. That's probably the most capable Air Force airplane that we have. First time at Westover again, and aerodynamically that airplane is absolutely amazing. It defies the laws of aerodynamics, the way it flies, and the crowd will be able to see that right in front of them.
Wow, and the Geico Skytypers?
Mm-hmm.
What are those?
The Geico Skytypers are a formation, civilian performance demonstration, aerobatic demonstration. They're brought to us with the help of the Galaxy Community Council, and they'll perform in front of the crowds. They also have a routine where they'll do sky typing with smoke oil and actually type at different venues. I'm not sure if they're going to be doing it at Westover, but that's where they get the claim to fame.
That's fun. And when are these planes actually flying in? Are we going to see them throughout the week starting to come in? Do they come in that morning? When do they come in?
They'll be coming in. The Blue Angels will start to come in Tuesday, and then from Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, some of the bigger teams, the Blue Angels, the Golden Knights, and the Snowbirds will start to arrive. And actually the main Snowbird team will be coming in on Thursday, and we're trying to make the final coordinations that they can fly up the Connecticut River so everybody can see it when they arrive in Western Massachusetts.
Yeah, well, that was what I was thinking. I mean, are they going to all fly in formation? Is this going to be obvious when, the Blue Angels are here? Or, do they do that? Or, I don't know, are they going to be practicing at all?
Sure. The Snowbirds are, we're trying to coordinate that with the FAA, and to have them arrive at Westover in formation. The Blue Angels, they'll arrive, since it's an unfamiliar field, they'll arrive pretty much straightforward, normal operations. And then on Thursday and Friday, they'll be practicing, but not open to the public. And then Saturday and Sunday, they'll have everything, all their landmarks picked out. And that's really why they practice, so they can get a feel for the terrain and the landmarks. So when they do their routine, it's obviously very precise.
Okay, you also mentioned that some historic aircraft will be on display as well on the ground. What are we going to be able to see there? Are these some of the first aircraft to fly at Westover?
Yeah. Andrew's our history buff, so.
Well, we'll have the B-17. Thanks to a lot of this goes to thanks to the Galaxy Community Council. The B-17 was the most numerous bomber built in World War II. More than 12,000 were built, and this is one of 10. Only 10 that are remaining in the entire United States. So it's a real historic relic to see come in, and it'll be here. We'll also have a C-47, which was an old cargo plane from the World War II era, and also flew out of Westover back in the 50s and 60s. It's a military version of the old DC-3. So some classic, beautiful old airplanes.
Now, will there actually be someone there who can explain the history of some of these planes to people who might not see this and want to know more about this?
Well, we're expecting to have the air crews near the airplanes, because we know that there will be a lot of military aviation buffs out there wanting to know the specifications and how long they've been flying.
So is there actually a schedule for the air show? How does this work? If people, are going to come in either early in the morning or later, is there a schedule of events?
Yes, there is. We have a plan, and the weather will impact the plan on occasion. So the best thing and what I can suggest is to get here early, because the roads in the Western Mass area are just not designed to handle 200,000 people a day. So to get here early, and our parking lots may fill up by the afternoon. So the flying starts at 10, but the static display, the airplanes on the ground that people can actually go up, walk around to the bigger airplanes and talk to the crews, that starts at 9 o'clock in the morning. Okay. The national anthem will be at 10, and then throughout the day it'll either be fast, high performance, very loud airplanes flying in front of you, or the slower and the highly aerobatic, like Rob Holland is a civilian, 5-time national champion. That will just, it's amazing how he tumbles the airplane, does rolls and everything else in front of the crowd. So throughout the day, almost almost 6 hours of just demonstrations back to back to back.
Wow. So really, whenever you get there, as long as you can find a parking spot, get
Exactly,
it.
yes.
Okay,
Absolutely.
we'll talk about the logistics after we take a short break. I'm so happy the two of you are here and can give us a little sneak peek into the air show. So we'll continue our conversation on this. We're going to talk about the logistics, things like parking and security after the break. Then later, we're going to find out what's happening at the base as far as recent missions are concerned. Also, the C-5s that were slated to go to Texas. We'll find out what's happening with that as well. So there's a lot more to get to today. Stay with us. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Welcome back to 22 News in Focus. Today we're talking about the upcoming Great New England Air Show and the 75th anniversary of Westover Air Reserve Base. We're continuing our conversation now with representatives from Westover. We have Lieutenant Colonel David Smith with us, the Air Show Director, and we have Master Sergeant Andrew Bisco with us as well. Again, thank you both so much for being here. We were just talking about what's going to be happening in the sky and on the ground. It all sounds so exciting. It's going to be a really fun weekend to celebrate the 75th anniversary, Armed Forces Day, and just a great day overall. So let's talk about the logistics. First off, the weather. I do want to talk about how the weather could impact this, if at all. Does the air show go on rain or shine? How could this be impacted?
Sure, and the air show will go on rain or shine because we have airplanes on the ground, and those will be open all day long, regardless. All of our flying teams, they all have what we call low show. So if the clouds are at a lower altitude, they have to stay out of the clouds in order to do their performance. And they have where they won't do loops, where they go up really high and come back down. They'll do more turns and tumbles in front of the crowd, but underneath the clouds. Mm-hmm. So even with marginal weather, mist, light rain, they'll still be flying in front of the crowd the whole time. So rain or shine, absolutely.
And it is it's a free event, right?
Yes,
to get into the air show. So, I mean, come on down no matter what, right?
Exactly.
It's going to be a great time.
Absolutely.
We know a meteorologist or two here in this show, so we'll try to pull a few strings.
That'd be great.
Yeah. So let's talk about security. Obviously, with big events like this, there is always a security concern. Can people just come right in with anything? Are you going to be checking bags? How does this work?
Before I go into that, I just wanted to let you know, just to say that safety and security is always our top priority, especially planning an event like this. So as we go through all of those avenues and every step of the way, we're always thinking about those things for the citizens of Western Mass. And then and part of those concerns is we will have security, much like going into Disney World or the Big E, where all the backpacks, if you're bringing a backpack, will be searched. Any vehicle that comes onto Westover is subject to searching. And then we ask that in order to expedite going through the security checkpoints, there are a couple rules. No coolers will be allowed, and if you do have to bring food or water, we just ask to be in a plain, clear container. As far as if people need medicinal supplies, insulin and baby bottles, obviously that's all allowed, and we'll make arrangements for that. We have handicapped parking areas that are up close, but the ramp is large. It's about a quarter-mile square. So if anybody does have trouble walking, we just ask that if you have a wheelchair or a walker or something to help you walk, you're more than welcome to bring that with you, so that you can take in all the airplanes that are available to view.
No weapons of any kind,
No
obviously.
weapons, no.
Even this is a military base. Leave the weapons at home.
Leave the weapons at home, absolutely. And even knives, that sometimes catches people, but we just have no tolerance for having that many people there with knives on base, so we just ask that you leave them at home.
And there will be surveillance cameras there. Is that there's always surveillance cameras on there?
Yes, we have so the surveillance cameras are always working at the base. In addition to that, we've made arrangements with local law enforcement, as well as the Massachusetts State Police and some of their various teams that will be out at the base that weekend. And we also have Army, MPs, Marine Corps helping us out with security. So we'll have, and then our Security Forces Squadron take the lead with many augmentees to help with the parking and the traffic control, but also with security in general.
Do you have concerns about having so many people come on a military base? I mean, normally in a day-to-day operation, I'll be one person, and it takes a very long time to get onto the base. How about having all of these people coming onto the base? Are you yourself, for national security purposes, stepping up your own security?
Oh, sure, absolutely. And we think it's the right thing to do. And that's why we screen, and we have extra measures that I won't go into right now that we're taking to make sure that that the security is there. And we've been briefed by a couple different agencies as well, as far as
Things that we
to
can't
watch
know,
out for.
understandably
Exactly.
so. That's good. Let's talk about the traffic as well.
Sure.
How can people get onto base? There are a number of different entrances. Which are the best ones?
It depends which direction you're coming from. If I could direct people to the greatnewenglandairshow.com, there's an FAQ section, or if they come to just Google or the Westover Air Force Base, that'll also take us to our public affairs site. Either one of them have the FAQs. We have street addresses you can punch into your GPS. So, those addresses, we have 4 gates on base that will be open, and each one of them come from a different exit off the Mass Pike or from 291.
Okay.
So we'll be using every available road in Granby, Ludlow, and Chicopee to get people on base and off base at the end of the day.
It's going to be a busy time to be in Chicopee, but what a great time to be a business in Chicopee. Do you
Absolutely.
find that businesses do very well when you have these air shows?
Yeah. And actually, they did a study in 2008 on the Airshow, and do you remember the number, Andrew? Or
Somewhere in the neighborhood of about 13 million that the economic impact was from the 2008 air show.
Wow.
Where we had about 280,000 people. That was with the Thunderbirds.
Wow.
Yep.
Now, do you actually have food and drink there on base?
Yes.
So people don't have to bring lunches or anything?
Correct. Yeah, we hire a concessionaire to come in to serve the food. It'll be for a price, of course, and they'll be there all day. And they also have some souvenirs that they'll sell to the crowds. So anybody who wants something. There's a kid zone too. If the smaller children get a little antsy, there'll be I think they're scheduled to have a little train ride and bounce houses and things of that nature. And then one thing I will suggest to parents is to bring earmuffs or earplugs for the kids. The F-18, the F-22, very, very impressive airplanes, but very, very loud. And the earmuffs and the earplugs for everybody, really, but especially for the kids. Please bring them, because it'll make their viewing that much more enjoyable.
Yeah. When are the heaviest traffic times that you're expecting? How should people plan? How early do you anticipate? Do you expect traffic jams to get in? What should people plan on for that?
We actually are talking to the Massachusetts Department of Transportation, so they'll have signs up on the Mass Pike. As one area might get more congested, we'll send people to a different exit. If they follow the signs, it's probably their best bet. There will be people lined up at 8:30 in the morning when the gates open. It'll probably get heaviest between 12 and 2. And then, unfortunately, in past years, we've had to turn people away starting around 2 o'clock, if not earlier, either because the congestion's so bad or because the parking lots are full. So that's why we keep suggesting to people to try to come early.
And are people able to leave and come back to the air show as they wish?
Yes, absolutely. The coming into the air show after 2 would be difficult, and then but going back and forth to your car is no problem if you want to leave things in your car and go back. It just takes a little time to get on one of our shuttle buses from the main ramp where the airplanes are out to the parking lots, but it's no problem.
Okay. We have so many more questions about what missions you have going on and some changes you have to the base. Before we wrap up our conversation with the air show, I guess just what are you most looking forward to? What would make this a great, successful weekend? Anything that we haven't talked about that you want people to know about next weekend's air show?
Well, the C5 will be flying.
C5
so that's
will
going to be the best
fly.
part of the air show.
That's when he flies.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but yeah, the thing I'm looking forward to the most is seeing people from Western Mass coming on base, talking to the men and women in the 439th, the Marine Corps, the Navy that are on site. That's what it's really all about, is opening up our doors and allowing people to know what we do at Westover. And I'm really excited to see that interaction.
Excellent.
And inspiring our next generation of folks, of youngsters. And I need to get this in there, that a hat and sunscreen too.
You're
with the
right.
sun out there.
There you go. That's great advice. Thank you so much. I think it's going to be a great weekend, and like you said, it is a great opportunity to not only inspire the young kids in our community, but also, it's such an important base, and it's right in our backyard, and it's, so many people don't know what goes on there. It's a great chance to walk on and ask some questions and see some great acts in the sky. It's going to be really fun.
Absolutely.
Okay, Westover has continued to be a very important part of our nation's defense. Next, we're going to discuss the base's future. Stay with us. You're watching 22 News in Focus. You're watching 22 News in Focus. This year marks the 75th anniversary of Westover Air Reserve Base. We've spent the first half hour of our program talking about what we can expect for next weekend's Great New England Air Show. Now let's find out how the base is doing as a whole. There have been a lot of changes there that reflect the nation's defense plans. Continuing our conversation about the future of Westover, we have Westover Lieutenant Colonel David Smith and we have Master Sergeant Andrew Biscoe here. Thank you both again so much for being here. A few months ago, we dedicated an entire program to some changes that were coming to the military base, basically because federal cuts were announced. Major changes that we heard that were coming to Westover were that some C-5 aircraft were going to be moving to Texas and that roughly 334 positions were going to be cut at Westover. So I do want to get an update on that. Let's start with the C-5s. At that time, we thought a few would be leaving and then we'd be making upgrades to the C-5 that were left here on the base. Where are we as far as that's concerned now?
Well, it was a little over a year ago when our wing commander, who was here then, General Vautrin, made the announcement about the cuts. It wasn't an easy day in any of our lives. It's a eventual loss of 8 airplanes. But it's not the airplanes, which we call iron on the ramp. It's the people that dedicate their lives to maintaining these airplanes that are going to be affected by these cuts, which are an overall Air Force plan to reduce the size of the C-5 fleet throughout the Air Force. So it is still planning to happen starting this fall. We are going to lose 275 positions as far as reservists, traditional reservists that are out there part-time.
Wow. And
59 full-time folks, air reserve technicians, a lot of these people that live right around this area. It's not something that we talk about with smiles on our faces. It's part of the defense budget cutbacks that are going on.
So have any of those C-5s left for Texas?
Yes, 2 of them.
2 of them have gone.
They're a big airplane and they go down to Georgia to get modified, and that's what's going to happen. The upside of this is that modification that's happening in Georgia. While we're going to lose 8 of them and they're going to another unit in Texas, the airplanes that are staying with us are going to be modernized as C-5Ms, just as those are the ones that are going to Texas. An entirely new airplane with those engines on it. They will not sound anything like what they sound like now.
Really? It won't sound like a house flying over. That's what it sounds like. They look like a big house.
It'll sound like what you hear when you're down at Bradley Airport. They sound like the engines are dramatically more powerful and much quieter.
Wow. Okay.
But this does affect people, and we're going to lose those positions.
So you said that 2 have left already. When do the other 6 leave?
It's again, because of the size of the airframe, it takes a certain amount of time for them to get them through the system down at the maintenance center in Georgia, but we're looking at 2018 before we become have just the 8 airplanes.
Okay, so until it's fully complete, it will be 2018. And as far as these 275 positions and part-time positions and 59 full-time that you were saying, do they know already that have people been notified?
Yes. And the Air Force, or I should say our folks, our leadership here at Westover, is doing everything they can within their power to try to get them different jobs, or some of them will be retiring as well. Some of them that have been around quite a while are retiring, but there is an effort being made to try to reclassify them into other jobs. Or they may have to move.
Mm-hmm. And have people actually been cut already, or is this something that will be happening?
It's something that will be happening. It's the word, I guess, is looming. It's looming. It's coming this fall. It'll start this fall. I don't know the specifics of how many people will be impacted right away, but with the new fiscal year comes this somewhat grim stuff too.
Well, I'm so sorry to hear it. How does this impact the mission and what Westover does for us every day? Are we still going to be able to respond as needed to fulfill any missions? How will this impact really what Westover is doing?
Well, the increase in the aircrew training will use the 8 airplanes a little bit more often, and that's the goal. So if the nation does call and we need to bring the reservists onto active duty, like we did during Desert Storm, or that trained bunch of crew members, I guess, is a bit. We'll still be there. The problem is we won't have as many airplanes, and historically Westover's always been the first and the most to volunteer anytime from a humanitarian relief where maybe 1 or 2 or 3 airplanes are needed to a full-out war that we've been living in for the last couple of decades, where on and off Westover has mobilized either the entire base or portions of the base, including the aircrew and the maintainers.
And is this one area in particular? Are these specifically folks who work on the C5s who are losing their job? It's amazing to hear how many people work on those. I mean, you would imagine. I mean, they're huge. So
there are more than 400 folks that just work on the planes.
Wow.
So it's affecting a lot of people, and our leadership is doing everything they can to keep the morale up as this happens.
Well, next weekend will be a great opportunity to do that. I'm sorry to hear about the cuts coming. I know that there have been around $36 million in capital improvements on the base as well. Maybe you could talk about that. Is this something that people actually will be able to see next weekend at the air show? Yes,
one of the most tangible ones will be the way they come into the base. One of the gates that will be open will be the old main gate. When it was an active duty base, the James Street gate out in the Fairview section of Chicopee will be opened up temporarily, but they'll see all the construction going on as this gate is getting an extensive renovation and facelift. So they'll see that, and then a little less visible, but out on the main flight line will be the fuel hydrant system that's being put in underground, which is a huge, very sophisticated underground fueling system for our C5s, which need fuel. They're very big airplanes.
Yes, they are. Help me understand, how are improvements being made to military bases when we're hearing about federal cuts? It seems like across, this was a big hit when we heard about these cuts coming to Westover. So how are improvements still able to be made at these certain bases as well? Help me understand that.
There's a lot of different ways that the Pentagon budget works, but decisions like those that happen with the construction and everything are made at levels way above us. So a lot of times what we try to tell people, what we try to explain to people is that we're following orders from folks way above us.
And that's the simple and easiest way, to understand that.
And that's what we do. People tell us this is what's going to happen. We salute smartly and we carry on.
Now, do you know if there are any additional changes coming? I mean, you already have your own changes. Are these definitely going through? Is there anything that can possibly prevent this from happening? Or
from what we're seeing, it's going to happen because of the Air Force overall is downsizing its fleet of C5s to meet the budget requirements. But a bright spot is the recent announcement that we could, and I stress the word could be getting an additional 12 new tanker airplanes that could be coming because of the base's proximity to Europe, our excellent runways, that fuel hydrant system I mentioned, and our reputation, our stellar reputation as an Air Force Reserve unit.
That would be huge news if that does happen.
If it does happen, the first announcement of it possibly happening is going to be made this summer. The definite announcement will be next summer. To get 12 of those new tanker planes here would be huge.
Wow, that would be great. We'll have to continue to follow that. I'm happy to hear that. And again, why did these C5s need to go to Texas? You were just saying our proximity to Europe here is very good. So why would we be moving those planes down to Texas?
Part of that is because of the unit in Texas is the schoolhouse, we call, for the Air Force, where it trains all the C5 crews. So they're needing to shift some airplanes down that way. Again, what's driving the whole C5 movement is the fact that the fleet is getting smaller. Some of the older planes are being retired. There are 2 different generations of C5s, the A models, which we used to have up until 2006. And then those went on to other units, and we got the B models, which were built in the 1980s. The airplanes are aging, so some of the older ones are being retired. Less airplanes, and they still got to be distributed.
Okay, changes are happening. Some of them very grim, but it sounds like there could be some good news even in the future. So it goes both ways for sure. I do want to take a short break, and then we can talk about some of the recent missions. Not everybody knows exactly what Westover does when you take off, so this will be an interesting one to talk about. We'll talk about recent missions and the impact Westover has on our community, of course. Stay with us. You're watching 22 News in Focus. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Today we've been talking about the Great New England Air Show coming to Westover Air Reserve Base next weekend. We talked about who will be flying in our skies and what the logistics of the weekend will be. We were also just talking about some of the proposed cuts to Westover that we heard about last year. We talked about where we stand now and if it looks like any more cuts will be coming. Now let's talk about recent missions. Not everybody knows what's happening at Westover Air Reserve Base, so here's our chance to find out with Master Sergeant Andrew Biscoe and Lieutenant Colonel David Smith joining us once again today. So talk to us about what's going on all the time. I know that you have weekly missions that are happening. Tell me about them.
Sure. The unique nature of the Air Force Reserves is we have training missions in case the nation calls and we need to activate the full squadron. But we also do, there's a new construct going on, Total Force Initiative, where the reserves are participating with the active duty on a daily, weekly, monthly basis more and more. It's a cost savings measure primarily, but we also receive training out of it. And since 2000, Westover, the 337th Airlift Squadron, has been involved in Iraq and Afghanistan missions, either a full squadron mobilization through volunteer with up to 6 crews volunteering as full-time active duty members. And more recently we've tailored back a little bit at the request of AMC, our Air Mobility Command that governs our active duty missions into Afghanistan. So now we have crews that go out bi-weekly to Afghanistan to help with the efforts of resupplying and the drawdown of troops in there.
And so you'll be dropping off supplies and that sort of thing?
Yes, and more recently we're helping with the drawdown and bringing supplies back out and critical equipment out of Afghanistan. That's
interesting. People may not realize that, and that's happening right in our backyard. You know, I was with you when we did a refueling mission in the air, which was incredible. Quite a sight to see. I think we actually have some video from that. Tell me what this exactly was. What is this refueling in the sky all about? Why is this important?
Well, the C-5, as many bomber, cargo, and fighter airplanes, has a refueling port in the top of the airplane, just behind the crew seats. And the tanker, a KC-135, KC-10, or now the KC-46, which you can see in the video there flying in front of us, has a boom that comes out of the back of the airplane. They have quite a few fuel tanks on it with extra fuel, and their airplane connects to our airplane while we're in flight, and they refuel us. So the longest mission that the C-5 can go on is about 14 hours, but with that refueling capability, we can basically go non-stop and just refuel in the air so that we can go from one continent to the other and actually skip a whole continent and go straight to where the war is.
So is it very expensive to land and fuel up the traditional way? Is this more of is it a cost saver as much as a time saver? I mean, this is definitely a time saver to happen in the air.
Absolutely, and they only use this measure when our cargo really needs to get to its destination in a timely manner. It's a little bit more expensive to do it this way because now we're flying 2 airplanes to get the cargo to where it needs to go. So it's more expensive, but it also gets a piece of equipment there in a matter of maybe 20 hours as opposed to waiting 36 or 48 hours for that piece of equipment to get where it needs to go.
And you're a C-5 pilot as well.
Yes, I am.
Tell me what it's like to fly that massive plane and then also be in line with another plane for this refueling mission. What is that like for you? I mean, that just must take a lot of practice before you do it in the air.
It does, and it starts out in pilot training. As you know, when all pilots in the Air Force go through pilot training, and they learn basic maneuvers to fly airplanes close together. And then they take those skills and then they project them with the C-5. We'll go through training in our simulator. We can actually simulate the air refueling mission. But what I'd like to tell people is if you're going down the highway on, let's say, the Mass Pike, and there's a Exxon refueler next to you in one lane and you're in the other lane, usually you don't worry about it and you just end up passing them or they pass you. It's similar that everybody stays in their own lane and at the right speeds and the right altitudes. And then slowly, very slowly, the airplanes get close enough where the boom operator in the back of the refueling airplane can make the final adjustments to the boom.
Wow. As we were just seeing in that video too, it feels unnatural almost to be in a plane and see another plane so close. That's just not supposed to happen.
Correct, it's not.
Doesn't mean good news usually. It's incredible that you're able to do that. Another mission that we were a part of with you was in 2010 when the earthquake in Haiti happened, and we actually flew down to Homestead, Florida. The mission there was to bring a fire engine down. I thought it was so interesting because you could have fit I felt 100 more fire engines down. How does that work when you're, asked to do something specific? Tell me, if you are able to bring more, why wouldn't you?
The needs of where we're going is one thing. If it had to do with Haiti, that might have been that they just didn't, their airport in Haiti couldn't accept that many fire trucks. They didn't need them. Those decisions are made by U.S. Transcom, which is in Scott Air Force Base. They make the decisions of how to get the cargo either by airlift, which is the airplanes, sea lift, which is the cargo or the merchant marines, or by rail with the U.S. Army. So once the decision is made to move the cargo by air, that's when we are tasked with the mission. They decide what missions go and what goes on each airplane, and then our job is to take it where it needs to go. But in a mission that you were on, taking one fire truck down to Homestead in Florida, we get a lot of training out of that, and that's really it's important for us to maintain that constant level of training. For our reservists who have civilian jobs Monday through Friday, and they come out on the weekends to maybe do a trip like that, that gives them great training so that if our unit is mobilized, they're ready to go at a moment's notice. And that training happens on a monthly basis for all of our crew members.
Wow. And have you been called to Nepal? We've been seeing video of what's going on out there, or are other bases responding? How does that work?
Yeah, right now it's the active duty and the other bases. There are some C-17s, which are smaller airplanes, smaller cargo airplanes that can get into some of the fields, and if they needed the C-5 more than what the active duty can handle, absolutely they would just ask us, and we'd have many hands in the air volunteering to take time off of their civilian jobs to come out and do those missions.
And I know that the Air Force officials announced that Westover was among 4 Air Force installations chosen as a possible site to house the first Air Force Reserve KC-46A location as well. How important was that decision?
That was one of the biggest news items we've handled in a long time in our office, and to put it out there just to announce that we've even been selected was just huge. We don't know whether it's going to happen yet, but we are very excited at the prospect of it, to have 12 of these airplanes, brand new KC-46s at Westover.
Yeah. Now, when you get called to have these missions that we're talking about as well, how often do you have a whole lot of time to prepare for it? How quickly does this scramble happen?
For the air crew members, we also have aerial port squadrons that prepare the cargo. So they'll work on the cargo days before to make sure that it's ready to fly on an airplane, because it doesn't always start that way, especially with a fire truck. We have to drain the fuel out of it and other things. So our aerial port squadrons take care of the cargo and getting that ready. As far as the air crews, is for planning in a flight, it varies. Planning a flight to Homestead, we could do in a few hours. Planning a flight to Afghanistan, probably a little bit longer. So it depends on the where we're going, the threats that we're facing as we go in and out of those areas. And one of our big concerns is fatigue with the crews, because we do fly 24-hour days.
Wow.
And taking cat naps in between and stuff in order to get in and out of certain areas. So that's one of our main, scheduling criteria.
Well, there's a lot going on over at Westover, and I want to thank you both so much for coming on and talking to us, not only about current missions, but changes to the base, as well as preparing for the air show next weekend. It really is going to be an exciting time, and I'm so happy you were able to come on and talk to us. Master Sergeant Andrew Biscoe, Lieutenant Colonel David Smith, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you,
really
Laura.
do appreciate it. We're going to have the last word for you after the break. Stay with us. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Watching 22 News in Focus. Today's program highlighted the Great New England Air Show that's coming up next weekend, May 16th and 17th. Westover will also be celebrating Armed Forces Day that weekend and the base's 75th anniversary. 22 News will be providing full coverage of the air show. You can watch highlights on air and online at wwlp.com. But we certainly hope that you're going to attend the show. Stop by and say hi to us all in person. That is our program for today. We want to thank you at home for watching. Thanks to our guests for joining us here. If you've missed any of it, you can watch it in full on our website at wwlp.com. There you can also find links for the air show. From all of us here at 22 News, we wish you a wonderful Sunday, and we hope to see you next weekend. Take care.